name of your game from the claws of monsters.
Alrighty. Welcome. Good evening. Wow, that was weird. Good evening and welcome to Nikos RPG. I'm Jonathan Albin, your host, and tonight we are going to be talking about how we can add additional layers of integrity to our game sessions to improve them week over week and have our players feel really comfortable and enjoying the games that we present. I am a game master with 50 years of experience, and I do everything I can to help you make your games outstanding at your table. Alrighty, before we get started, make sure you go down and push the buttons down below, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, because that helps us to let the world know that we as an audience are increasing and I'm providing you materials that are helpful to you and your games. Today we're going to be talking, as I said, about integrity. And integrity is a word that may be out of fashion or out of use, and so I'll try to be clear on what I mean by it. The concept of integrity is literally comes from the idea of holding things together, that these are the elements of the game that are underlying the very play experience that we're trying to provide to our players and for our players to provide to each other. Integrity has a lot to do with sincerity, honesty, truthfulness, consistency, and a whole lot of other words. But really what we're focusing on tonight is how we can add levels of integrity to our game sessions to make them, each one, feel more real and more useful to us in our day-to-day lives as well as in our game sessions in particular. In particular, what we're talking about in this case, the first and foremost thing is to find ways to draw in player involvement and the persona, the characters that they are playing, to invest in the mechanism of the story and thereby hold their interest week over week so that they feel like they are part of the developing story itself. Player involvement goes with everything from the actual engagement in conversations in the game setting to individualizing and personalizing the input of the NPCs, or the non-enjoying persons that they interact with, so that they feel and experience the role play in that much deeper, richer environment. Players will add to the game's outcome when they feel that their story elements that they are providing are accepted and are integrated into the episode scene after scene. So it's a matter of a little bit of give and take between the players and the director, the dungeon master or whatever, to make sure that the input makes sense and it connects to the story so that everyone feels its utility and its value. The next part of this actually comes with the concept of the players adhering to the game session protocols, and that's a fancy way of saying what it is that you have agreed to beforehand about play experience. Are we including the player having enough time to actually make sure you've got parity between your players in terms of their input? Do we have an understanding of priorities within the game session in terms of what is proper interruption and what is improper, and an understanding of the very rules of play? For example, in my games, one of the things I'm pretty clear about is that the players may suggest reasons for rolling dice in game, but because that associates with their player advancement, I tend to work on making sure that it fits with the ethics of the scene and make sure that therefore they're getting the value for the advancement that's appropriate and that they're getting a chance to input. In addition to this would be things like interrupting for phone calls or having to go and get snacks, and the timing, propriety of when you interrupt, and that kind of thing. This one falls mainly to the storyteller, but the maintenance of a consistent story is absolutely essential for players to feel that a story is advancing and that they are a part of that advancement. In essence, you want to make sure that the pieces that you provide for the players to engage with are such that they can make changes, alter their direction, increase their attention, or whatever is necessary, so that they feel the story includes them and they are part of the very scene itself. And so this concept of consistency, there will be times, for example, when a game master needs to move a story along beyond a specific point, and perhaps he's allowed the players to belabor it a little in the past and he wants to fix it. So therefore there might be some elements of hand wavium that occur where the game master simply says, we handled that, let's move on. But in reality, we want those bumps and hitches in a game system to be understandable for the players. And so therefore, to do the work of a game master, you have to really do the diligence to make sure that the story makes sense. You'll hear me use that phrase a lot of times. Making the story make sense is essential to keeping your players involved and aware of how much their agency provides story elements that go on. I've got a player I've referred to several times that wears a t-shirt that says bad roles make great role play, and that's really the point, is that even when things go badly, if the story consistency is there, then even the players feel the relative merit of what they're doing and therefore sees it as an accomplishment. In addition to that, the storyteller has an obligation to make sure that he's applying the rules consistently and coherently. And by that I mean watching for the elements of difficulty in understanding what's going on so that the players can make the changes they need to within the game, but they will apply the rules of the game coherently. And that really means that the rules that you set for one player needs to be the same rules you adhere to another player. And so learning how to adjudicate with that level of coherency and unity of outcome is really, really important as well. An additional element of coherency and integrity is to create uniform interplayer trust and respect. And I would argue this may be one of the most difficult of these recommendations, that is most difficult of them to accomplish. And everything about that really comes down to how do you bridge the differences in approach, in flavor, in theme, and even the play styles between the players. And one of the ways to do that is to ensure that the players communicate not only as player, intercommunication, but more important, their persona, their characters interconnection as well. So that one of the ways that this gets done is that you allow the players to engage with each other in character in game session, and whether it be for a few moments or maybe an entire session once in a while, this really helps to build that concept of trust and respect one player will have for the other. We've had a recent situation where two player styles kind of came nose to nose and head to head, only because one was a veteran player with a decade or so within the Nikos system and at my table, and the other with the person that's only had several months and hasn't yet got to know, as the saying goes, where the rocks are. And I had to kind of go heavy-handed on the veteran because their play style was such that they were trying to be protective of the story, and therefore they began to start to tell the other player how to play, and that's problematic. So you have to learn how to create this uniformity of trust and respect, and those players have since then kind of crossed that boundary and are working on building out a way that they can play together by understanding how the others interact and looking for the keys to help that improve itself. What I have found is that players, when they are working with a long tail story, granted it's a little bit more of a challenge in some ways than the concepts of the single session or even a short series. The idea of the long tail saga is that the players really need to be able to build a database almost of what they know about the story and what they don't. And one of the ways that happens is by the players keeping copious notes about their own personal involvement in the story. And what I have found beyond that is that there are really strong elements of those notes that can be used within a group so that the players individually may not be able to hold the collective memory of everything that happens each week, but they can research and resource these mechanics and therefore find ways to work together by having copious notes that are shared. In addition to that, especially when you're talking about a large scale, long form campaign style, there are times when you need to actually create fundamentally a battle report after a session so that the players can recap what happened in each session and what their parts were in it for roleplay purposes. And in addition to that, of course, you have the pre-game conversations, which I call OSSF, which is our story so far. And by having that pre-game refresher that where the players can speak both in and out of character to clarify what happened last session or whatever, you really provide a way for coherency and glue to maintain the integrity of their overall story. There are elements, of course, that can be lost, and that's really why the notes are so important, because you can cross-reference and look back through them to determine what really happened week over week. And this is absolutely essential to the power of the long tail game. Okay, final section here I call Parting Shots is a series of little elements that I wanted to include but didn't really have a place within the others. And these are going to be focusing specifically on our obligations, our purposes as game masters and storytellers. And one of the most important of these obligations is to be a trustworthy resource when it comes to information about the game. Problematic to that is how much you retain of what you've done week over week. And so recordings such as these are one of the ways to do that, is you can simply record your mission in the immediacy after completing it so that there's an idea of what's going on within the story element. Another way to do it would be to actually have recordings of the players determining what their story so far was as they saw it at the end of a session so that you can play that back. Another of the obligations that a game master has is to sort of be judge, jury, and executioner when it comes to players that are having challenges. We had a recent situation where we had a persona that was consistently rolling dice in advance of necessity to make sure they had a good die roll. And once they had one, they would then announce that die roll as being the last one they did because they rolled 18 times beforehand and they stuck on the one. And the problem with that, of course, is that you're always guaranteeing a success when there may or may not have been one if you had rolled at the moment that it was required. And this may seem problematic or challenging, but what it really comes down to is that the players are, if they're wanting the play experience to be as truthful or as I guess homogenous as possible, they need to be able to recognize those limitations and play into the restrictions in a way that captures that. So by creating a concept of an open die roll where it occurs on the tabletop, and you want everybody to see your outcomes to prove when you've had a really cool die roll or a really bad one. It resolved that. And little elemental changes like that you add to your game session will make your sessions by themselves have a greater integrity. Holding to the truth as much as you can within NPC outcomes, and reducing the number of gotcha moments that can actually occur within a game and undermine your trust level really helps to create the value of the game sessions and increase the integrity of your games week over week and session after session. Well, that covers what I wanted to cover in this session, so I want to thank you for being with us. If you get an opportunity, you can check out the games that we run live at Board Games Paradise on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you are interested in becoming a player in our community, check out patreon.com/Nikos, NYCOS, and join us there. And by becoming a member at Patreon, you gain access to our online games that are held on the weekend. So do remember that we record Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. generally, and we will see you in the next episode. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been Nikos RPG, and I'll talk to you next time. See you later.